Welcome back. Last week when we were talking about Inverell, when we visited that area down there, I mentioned that I find myself becoming more and more interested in the artefacts and the history of the various areas that we visit. Now, a couple of years ago we had a real feast, for me anyhow. We visited Queenstown, New Zealand. We combined a superb area, an area of great beauty, with an artefact which truly fascinated me. She's an old steamship, and of course there's nothing nicer than an old steamship. She's named the Earnslaw. She's been on the lake at Queenstown for almost 100 years, and we had a close look at a beautiful old lady. Let's have a look not only at the Earnslaw, but at Queenstown, Coronet Peak and the Remarkables. We're at Queenstown on Lake Taupo in the Fjordland area, the southwestern shore, or the southwestern area of the South Island. I don't have to tell you how gorgeous it is. It's absolutely beautiful. Lake Taupo is a sort of a double boomerang shape and is the longest lake in New Zealand at about 52 miles. Now it has a great history, a history of cattle farming around its shores, of gold mining on the Shotover River, which is fed by the lake, and also of the Earnslaw, which is quite a large steamer which has served the lake since about 1912. In the early days it was the only access to quite a few of the farms around the shore of the lake there. Nowadays she's an old lady in her retirement, still essentially exactly as she was when she was first built and first operated on the lake 75 or 80 years ago. And we're going to go down into Queenstown and have a close look at the Earnslaw. One of the interesting things about the Earnslaw is that she is essentially exactly as she was when she was built in Dunedin in 1911. The waters of the lake are extremely pure, and there's been very few problems with rust contamination of the steel plates. Now, she is riveted steel plate construction. She was built in Dunedin and she was bolted together to check the fit of everything. She was then torn apart, all the plates were numbered, put on the rail and taken to Kingston on the southern end of the lake, where she was reassembled and riveted together on a slip and put in the lake. Now that happened in 1912 when she was first commissioned. She's been active on the lake ever since that time. Originally she was used for carting sheep and cattle to the various properties around the shore of the lake. She's had some most interesting and unusual loads aboard. She's worked extremely hard all her life, and she is now what you could call in semi-retirement. She doesn't carry cargo anymore, but she does carry tourists and passengers around the lake to let them see the scenery from a truly unique and magnificent old lady. The Earnslaw is quite a large old lady. She's 168 feet long, 24 feet in beam. She draws 7 feet and displaces just over 400 tonnes. Now she's powered by 2 triple expansion McGregor steam engines, which are actually recirculating engines. The steam, after it's come out of the third cylinder, is put through a condenser using a steam-driven vacuum pump and turned back into hot water to be reused by the engines. Her bunkers hold 14 tonnes of coal, and at her cruise speed of about 13 knots, she uses around about a tonne an hour. Now, with 28 tonnes of coal, that gives you, of course, 28 hours at about 13 knots. Now, that's quite a decent range for an old girl of this age, and quite an impressive speed for a boat of this age. She really does move along. I mean, and she gets from 0 to 13 knots in very, very short order. Now, she's in the process of undergoing a comprehensive refit. Let's have a look below. The engine room is exactly as it was when it was built in 1911. Now, it's a bit difficult to see in here because there's not much light, but on either side, just behind me there, are the 2 triple expansion steam engines standing about 15 or 16 feet high. They deliver about 500 horsepower each, using 160 pounds pressure of steam, which is delivered by a pair of locomotive boilers, which are mounted just forward there. Really very interesting, and the boilers, by the way, are completely original. Now that 1,000 horsepower combined between the 2 engines drives the old ship at around about 13 knots, which is really quite a turn of speed for an old girl of her size and weight and age. If you look at a map of the North Island of New Zealand, right in the middle of it is a great big patch of blue. Now that is Lake Taupo, at least the trout fishing centre of New Zealand, and the locals tell me it's the trout fishing centre of the world.
Whilst Lake Taupo is New Zealand's longest lake, Lake Taupo
is the largest, 1,120 feet above sea level, a vast extinct volcano crater. It has a surface area of 230 square miles and a shoreline of 380 miles. It's up in the Alps country. It really is quite beautiful, with a picturesque town of Taupo. And we managed to contact Miles Johnson in Taupo, who enabled us to catch some fish. Now, he has a cruiser named Awatia. She's a 30-footer, and Miles really does know the ropes. He's been fishing there for around about the last 5 years. Let's catch some trout with Miles Johnson. Miles, this is a most unusual way of fishing. I mean, we've got 700 feet or so of steel line out with a little bit on the end with the lure on it.
That's right, that's right. Well, it's unfortunate, but we have to resort to using this method from time to time. For the exercise here, it's important that we get a fish pretty quickly, right. Hopefully.
What dictates the use of steel, for instance?
Well, we use the steel because we want that lure, incidentally, is 700 feet behind us, as you know, and it's also just off the bottom, which is 135 feet down.
Is it right?
We aren't allowed to use paravanes or lead weights to get the line down that far.
Who stops you from using that?
The law.
The
internal affairs who make up the rules and regulations, yeah.
Right.
And it's also brought about by the Wildlife Conservative Council and what have you.
Okay, give the fish a fighting chance, in other words.
I think that's about it, yeah.
Now, is trout the only species in the lake?
Yes, and what they feed on, there's kura, which of course is the crayfish, similar to your yabby, the freshwater cray. We call it kura, that's an indigenous species. And the smelt, they were introduced in the late 1920s as another food source.
For the trout.
And they're little minnows, about 2 inches long.
Was the lake stocked with trout, or
yes,
it augmented?
Yes, it was. 100 years ago last year, we celebrated the centennial arrival of trout to this lake.
Is that right?
And they were brought across from the rainbow trout from the Russian River in California, 100 years ago, yeah.
And obviously levels are fairly high. If we can just come out very close to town and really expect to catch a fish, and I hope we do catch a fish, obviously the levels are fairly high.
Well, hopefully, within the next half hour, we can prove to you that Taupo is justified as being considered the greatest trout fishing puddle in the world.
Yeah,
and throughout the season, which is year-round, of course, on the lake. They close the rivers at this time of the year for the spawning, but we fish the lake all year round, and I'm anticipating that we can catch a fish quite readily here.
I spend a lot of time on rivers, but it's not often I get to walk around on one. I obviously haven't got any holes in my feet. Obviously this is not your normal river. It's a glacier, the Tasman Glacier, which runs down a cleft in the mountains alongside Mount Cook. It's unusual in that it's carved for itself a cleft down here between the mountains, which is about 2,000 feet deep. In other words, there's about 2,000 feet of ice underneath me. The glacier is 18 miles long, and it moves at the rate of about a foot a day, which causes that sort of thing to happen. You can see that vast mass of ice and snow coming over a ridge there, and the blocks of ice cracking and falling as they move over and down. And all the way down the glacier you can see the ice and snow moving down into the cleft as it makes its way down towards the sea. Another example of the sort of scenery that New Zealand offers, as I've said before in these two episodes, it's a superb place. It's a place where you can find scenery from all of the countries in the world. Some of the most spectacular scenery you can find anywhere in the world, you can find in New Zealand, and it's readily accessible. Now, Mount Cook Lines runs a Pilatus Porter and Cessna 185 service on a several times a day basis to bring people up to this glacier. Now, In order to get here in any other way, it would take probably 5 or 6 days of fairly grueling and rigorous travel. Again, New Zealand offers that type of access to some of its most spectacular scenery. I guess first impressions of any country when you first visit it are quite vivid. My impressions of New Zealand have been that it offers superb scenery wherever you go. As I said, that's quite readily accessible. The people are very friendly. In fact, it seems to me that if you took a still camera, closed your eyes, turned around 6 times in one direction, 4 times in the other, and aimed and clicked it without opening your eyes, every time you would come up with a postcard picture. The scenery is truly that superb, and it's combined with both passive and active leisure activities which really fill the bill for anybody who wants to visit the country. This is the Rangataiki River, which we saw last week on World of Boats with our jet boating. This is up in the headwaters of the river with some whitewater rafting. Now this, whilst it may look dangerous, is certainly exciting but quite safe. The river is shallow. At this time of year it's not running too quickly. The snow is building up rather than melting, but there's certainly enough water there to give you plenty of excitement and a few thrills and spills. Wetsuits are worn as well as buoyancy vests, so you can't get into trouble if you fall into the water, and you can not only look at the scenery but you can bump into it, as you see there, and really have a marvellous time in the process. The rafts, by the way, are built from reinforced rubber. They don't suffer from punctures. The rocks are polished relatively smooth. Whilst they are sticking out of the water by their thousands, they've been polished smooth by hundreds and thousands of years of water and sand running over them, so they don't actually tear or pierce the boat. The boat bumps off them, and you can certainly have a marvellous time. Now, if you're looking for scenery, the Remarkables ranges, which are very close to Queenstown, are in the process of being developed into a new ski resort, and the Remarkables offer some beautiful skiing slopes there. They're closer to Queenstown than Coronet Peak is, and have a look at this for spectacular scenery. Coronet Peak is about 40 minutes drive out of Queenstown. The mountain's just over 5,000 feet high, and it has a lift on it, that lift which goes for just over a mile. Now, it also has a vertical rise of about 1,300 feet, so it's quite a substantial lift. The snow is magnificent for most of the ski season. It's a little sparse at the moment, but we expect to fall in the next couple of days, which will bring it right up to standard. But there are plenty of people on the mountain having a marvellous time skiing. Now, Coronet recommends itself firstly for its proximity to Queenstown, so therefore it's easily accessible. The slopes are ideal for beginners, and the ski instructors, the ski school here it certainly has some of the best ski instructors in New Zealand. So if you've never skied before, this is the place to come. But if you're an expert, just over the other side of the mountain there are some truly remarkable slopes.